black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
The model of going to school to learn is relatively new. Before 1900, most children learned at home and out in the real world. In 1837, the state of Massachusetts formed the first state board of education, with Horace Mann as its secretary. Mann believed that everyone was entitled to the same content in education. Returning from a research trip to Germany in 1848, Mann lobbied heavily to have the Prussian model adopted. He quickly set about establishing a statewide system of common schools, staffed by professionally trained teachers. His ideas quickly gained momentum, and by 1852, Massachusetts passed a compulsory attendance law. Mann also believed that school could become a great equalizer, and values such as obedience to authority, promptness in attendance, and organizing time according to bell ringing would help students prepare for future employment in an industrial age.
And the whole purpose of it is to create a docile factory military workforce. The whole purpose is to subordinate children and get them in that mindset of being subordinated so they grow up to be subordinated adults.
This is the poorest class I've had.
Prussian schooling had been out to destroy the imagination. In every public library worth its salt in the United States and in every college library, you will find a collection of essays by a Prussian philosopher, Johann Fichte. Fichte said we have to set up a system of universal forced schooling in which we destroy the imagination. Bells, ordered lessons, constant testing, rankings.
The entire system is designed to regiment a large group of people and to get them all to do the exact same thing.
By 1900, 34 states had compulsory schooling laws. Half the nation's children attended one-room schools. And by 1918, every state required students to complete elementary school.
The reality is they want children to take their place in society, be cogs, and keep this system going. So you're going to school to take your place.
Now the trouble's with your attitude. You don't pay enough attention in class. You don't do enough work outside of it.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. This is part 2 of a two-part series that I am doing on the United States and the origin of the United States public school system and some of its problems. Before I go any further, my name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and for those of you who are new to the show, the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. And one of the things that I always say again is that I always use history to illuminate the present moment. So that's the dynamics of this show. I go into the past to show you how we get to the present and how we have a dysfunction in the public school system. Now, I don't blame, there are bad teachers out there, don't get me wrong, but I don't blame teachers because I have friends that are great teachers, but they're struggling within a system that's archaic and came from a different era that had nothing to do with the education of the people around there. Like I showed in the first half, it is there for people to be compliant, to go by the will of the elite, who's at the top. Okay, and I ended with the fact that John D. Rockefeller put in the early 20th century, he was very influential in what was now we call the United States public school system. He put a lot of money, the equivalent of like $1.227 billion of his money to influence the boards of education, to shape the way American workers think. And at that time, it was about factory workers, you know, with its cars and assembly lines. And this is nothing new. For 100 years prior, with the burgeoning of the industrial age, the system that they took was the Prussian system. And that's one of the things they created to condition the workers in a certain way to function better in the factory setting that was established. Not to think, but to follow directions. So that's why I'm saying it's got to be updated, because our kids today are tuning out. And I hope by the end of this other half, you'll understand why. I'll start with, like I started in the first, for those who you knew, I'll show you what I based this book. This is the book I based it on. Weapons of Mass Instruction by this gentleman. He was a well-awarded teacher in the New York State. His name is John Taylor Gatto. He's passed, but he wrote this book, Weapons of Mass Instruction. And he said he understands that, you know, what it is I was really teaching. He was very disillusioned. He was a very good teacher. As you can see, he was the New York State Teacher of the Year, and he was a 3-time New York City Teacher of the Year. Very dedicated, but he became very disillusioned when he had to deal, especially in the inner city where he worked. And he saw the difference between what was promised in 1954 with Brown versus the Board of Education and what he was experiencing as a teacher in that school system. It was not equal, okay? I know we talk about it as black people, you know, every year at Black History Month about the Board of Education, you know, as some landmark, but it's never lived up to that. And this is what this disillusioned teacher wrote that book. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Today, as Americans, we are called to examine and update a structure built long ago, and that is our public school system. Okay, I wrote that because that's what I want people to understand. This system is archaic. If you saw in the video, it talks about the Prussian system. And it talks about it came into being because the Prussians were defeated by Napoleon in the Battle of Jena in 1806, and they had to revamp the whole society because they were upset because of that loss, and they wanted a system that they could control the thinking of their society, and they started from children. So they created this educational system that we adopted in mid-1800s, and we function under that to this very day. Okay, but it is a structure built almost 160 years ago. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, the American public school system has been essential to Americans' operation because we educate the next generations of workers for well over 160 years, now more like 200 years, as are the studs and joists we can't see in the physical building we call the house. But after so long, they definitely need to be upgraded, okay? The system that I'm talking about, the public school system that I went to over 50 years ago, is functioning the same way as it was today, as the day 50 years before I did, in the early 1900s. This is the problem. When you move into a house, do you just move into a 200-year-old house, you say? Do you do something? Do you move in without upgrading it and fixing, making sure the joists and all the boards and everything that you need are upgraded, the floors, the wiring? But we have a system that's over 200 years old and was based on a Prussian type of mentality, warlike, and control and discipline without thinking about the individual or soldiers. That's how our students are taught in the public school system. Again, not the teacher's fault. They had to follow the dictates of the system. That doesn't change. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, just like I said before, just like old house, America has a failing structure called the United States public school system. Let's go on. Now, what was it designed to do? Again, you might have got a little indication of that in the video. Let's talk about that. Let's go on to the next one. The American public educational system we inherited in the mid-19th century, the Prussian model, wasn't designed for a multicultural population. It wasn't designed for black, brown, Native Americans. No, it was for the dominant group, and the dominant group elites, in fact. It was originally designed to create compliant industrial age white factory workers. Okay, the rest, you got the elite, they got the private school. You got the next tier. You got those who were in better neighborhoods, okay, in Prussia. Okay, they got those higher, better schools. Okay, you got the private school for the elites. We got it today. All these rich corporate children get the private education. Then you have those in the more expensive school districts. They get all the books and all the better gyms and the better facilities because they live in communities with higher tax brackets. Then you got the rest of us, the poor. Okay, and I'm throwing in white poor too when I talk about it. But black and brown and white poor. And that's the majority of the public school system. And those are the monies that's where the money has not been always going to, or the money's been taken away, or what you see in the news today, books being taken out, usually in these poor schools, if they get books at all. And these teachers are trying to do the best they can under the situation. Let's go on to the next one. According to the Prussian model of education, the purpose of education is to prepare young people to live and serve their society and to transmit their knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes of the society, okay? What the society tells you to think, how you take a test, what we want you to learn in the test. We don't want you to think for yourself outside the box. We got, that's what some of these charter schools are trying to do. Not all charter schools are great. Some of them try to do that, contrary to the public school system, which teaches you a certain way in a rigid form. You got innovative teachers who try to make it, but they are underfunded. Some of them have to come out of their own pocket, especially in the inner school, city schools and poor school systems. Let's go on to the next slide. This is the Prussian national school systems. The standardized schools, grades go to the industrial or the military. This is what you see. You see the desk, you got the teachers. Well, what's the difference between you got your area of expertise in the factory, and you got your factory boss or your supervisor? You get conditioned to that. The bells, when the bells ring, you get up and go to the next class. You get up and go on break. You get up and go to another class. You get up and go to lunch. Same system. Same kind of discipline we do in the military too. But that's why our children are not, because they're a bunch of individuals. And we got great, smart kids who might not want to be taught a certain way, have a certain way of learning, but the system is not meant for them to express that. There's a problem there. It needs to be innovated. That joist needs to be replaced. The house needs to be updated. Let's go on. And this is another term for the earlier term for the public school system. We're called factory schools, because that's all they were preparing you to do, work in these factories. Okay, and that's even if you're poor white. Black folks, we weren't even allowed to go to school. The only institution, again, let me bring this point in. The only institution that was brought into being specifically for black people was the institution of slavery. All other things we had to fight to get in. Or some benefactor would start a school, okay? So the public school and our labor is what gave the money to the states. We wasn't compensated for our work, but the states and this country benefited from our labor, but we could not reap the benefit, even in public school system, from the 1830s, even through emancipation and so-called 1415 amendment, 13, 14, 15 amendments, and during Reconstruction. But we did educate ourselves, but with the help of benevolent type societies or rich white men who started schools for us poor black folks, okay? Again, I want to emphasize, education was provided by the state and learning was regimented. Okay, we all grew up in that kind of structure. Dozens of students at a time in a classroom. Okay, we hear about, it's even worse now with overcrowding at a time, placed in grades according to their age, first grade, second grade, third grade, and moved through a successive grade as they mastered the curriculum. That's the factory school system. And if you don't master the curriculum, well, you just drop out. And we're losing millions of kids who are dropping out because of that kind of regimented type of thinking. We got to change that. Let's go on to the next one. This is just one of the individuals who pushed that system, and he was the father of scientific management. Okay, but the science was to tighten up and justify the public school system. You got an image up on the right side. They removed, this is the kind of science he's created, removed the need for complex skills. We don't want you to do high math. We just want you to turn a widget. We don't care about that. His work in industrial resulted in the completely new set of incentives and requirements in the educational system. Does not benefit the individual, it benefits the factory boss or the corporation. We still have that today. We still have that mindset, okay? His methods were from their inception rivaled by factory workers, okay? Were reviled by factory workers because, that's when we had all those strikes, and that's when we had the formation of unions, because you were dealing with human beings who were treated like robots, okay? But they were thinking robots. And we had a lot of clashes in the latter part of the 1800s and the early part of the 20th century. Let's go on. This is the regimental thing. This sounds look familiar? Many of us went through this. This is the Prussian method. And everybody was treated and given the same type of block information that were told, okay? That's why even Carter G. Woodson said that we started Black History Month, talking as a black man, because what the information we were given, if we had the opportunity to go to any schools like this, would usually talk about George Washington and conditioning you to believe that the society that you are seeing, you were mostly given the mythology of America. Okay, land of the free and the hold of the brave and the war, the Revolutionary War, all white. Okay, and you're taught this. It's a conditioning process. And if you were white, you believed this, okay, to be true. Did not fit the reality when you went out into the real world, but this is what you were taught. And if you were black, you were forced to believe that, even though your experience in life was contrary to this reality. But this is a Prussian system, okay? K to 12, Prussian. Go ahead. Next one. A good education is supposed to be an investment in the future, not only of the child, but the entire family, okay? It was a good education is an access to college, which means access to better paying jobs. If you're in a poor community or in an inner city where your school funding has been slashed constantly and you don't even have new books, how are you going to be able to live that American dream if you can't even read at the grade level you're in? Okay, I got a statistic that I found out. As of August 2023, 28% of black students in Texas, the state that I'm in, were reading at grade level. Grade level means if you're in the fourth grade, you're reading at a fourth grade level. If you're at a fifth grade, you're reading at the fifth grade, sixth grade, so on, ninth grade, all those grades. Only 28% of black students in Texas, this is from 2023 study, are reading at their grade level. That means most of them are not reading at their grade level. Fourth grade, fifth grade, kids are not reading. The system is not dealing with the interests of the child, and we're losing. Teachers are working their butts off, but we're losing teachers also. A lot of them retired. That's the point of my show. I want you to understand that. Black people, got this book here I want to talk about. It's not the main purpose of the show, but this is a whole book if you want to understand how black people dealt with education. You know, this is a book, Education of Blacks in the South from 1860 to 19. We always was about education. This image of the dumb black person or the illiterate child. No, we were 90% illiterate when we were so-called freed by the 13th Amendment. 90% illiterate, okay? 10% were illiterate, read and write, okay? Frederick Douglass couldn't read and write. He had to trick his slave master's wife through the Bible to read. But by the turn of this is in 1865 when the 13th Amendment and the 14th and 15th Amendment was going for. By the turn of the century, we dropped that down to 20%, okay? From 90% to 20%. Black people were about education, but the system did not let them mesh in. You had Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but unequal. Okay, going all down to the Brown versus the Board of Education. It was always a struggle, again, from that Prussian kind of mentality. Black people didn't exist in that. Horace Mann and all these people that we're learning school, the father of public school system, they were also racist by today's definition. Let's go on. See, elementary school students who lack the proper motivation are statistically more inclined to drop out of high school. And how many black inner city school, underfunded schools, and then all the other stresses that goes on. If a kid is not properly fed, the kid is not going to be focused when they get into school. On top of that, okay, if you're not properly getting enough sleep, if you got to take care of your siblings because your single parent mom is working 2 jobs and she don't get home, you always wondering if your kids are hyper. They find out studies now that if kids are hyper vigilant, in other words, you're in a rough neighborhood, there's shootings and all kinds of bad things happening in that social structure. On top of the fact you're going to underfunded school and you're hyper vigilant, that adds to your stress level. And when a child is stressed out and not focused in school, and you got a white teacher, especially coming down on black boys, because boys are hyperactive to get with. But when they're stressed out and when they're hungry, they're even more hyperactive, and then they get punished for that, which adds to the complexity. And nobody is trying to figure out why. He just doesn't fit the structure. So we'll just put him in a special ed class and put him away, or one of the trailers in the back of the schools. This is what's going on to this day in the 21st century, okay? If something doesn't work, if you got a business model where something did not work last year and your profit margins went down, why are you using the same model this year? Why are you going to use the same model next year if you know last 5 years you had a downward trend? School system, and just like I said, I went to a school system back in the inner city when I grew up in New York 50 years ago. It was bad. They were bad then. And the same structures are in place to this day. Why is that business model still in place? That's my point. Let's go on. Let's go on to the next one. Now if a child lacks discipline in the classroom as a result of lack of home training, that's the excuse they usually say, well, there's no home training, blame it on the home. I tried to explain earlier that it's a lot of other things that goes on that have nothing to do with just the home. Yes, there's bad parenting too, but for the most part, people are stressed out. People are not focused. Parents are not focused. Parents are working longer hours. We're working longer hours today than we did in the 1970s, statistics show, okay? It says a lot for itself. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, like I said, it was designed to indoctrinate children from the age of 6 to 16, okay? The Franciscan priests used to say when they went out in the world during the exploration from Europe, they would say, "Give me your child at the age of 7, and we'll have him for life." Indoctrinated for either the factory workers to work for the factory system or the corporation or for the military. That's what the Prussian system. This is the system that we still exist to this day. Indoctrinate, not educate. Let's go on. Talking about educate, I just want to stop here and get you a little thing. When we use the word educated, are we truly educating? Okay, like I said on the left, you said the word educate comes from the Latin root word edus, which means to lead. The word educator, which is our teachers supposed to come, or anybody could educate parents, but it's based on this. I'm talking about the public school system. Come from combining the prefix e in educate, which means out. The Latin root dus, like I said, means to lead, and then the a, which means to act of, and the or, which means the one who does. Therefore, the word educated means one who's engaged in in the act of leading others out of the darkness of ignorance. Okay, this is what Mr. Gatto was enthusiastic. That's why he won all of the wars, but then he got burnt out and turned off. Okay, we got a lot of great educators out there, but the system that they're working in doesn't allow them to do the act of leading others out of darkness or ignorance. We just got to practice for certain tests. And anybody who doesn't meet those standards, like I said, we're losing millions and millions and millions. Okay, let's go on. I got about less than a minute, but I'll see it go on there. This is how I think about teaching, okay? Teaching is the profession that teaches all other professions, right? Without teachers, we won't have doctors or lawyers and other things. But you got to build that interest from kindergarten, from junior high school, or middle school, as they call it today. The influence of a good teacher can never be erased. Again, this is another thing that we have good teachers, but the system does not allow them to constantly do that. A teacher takes a hand, opens a mind, and touches a heart. You've seen great kindergarten teachers and who know their children, who buy them books because they can't afford it, especially the ones in the city. The teacher plants the seed of knowledge that lasts a lifetime. And I'll leave it at that. You see, the educational system is not functioning. We're headed to go off a cliff. And this is why I'm doing this show. I wish I could talk for another 2-3 hours, which I could, and I got enough more information. But I just wanted to whet your palate to understand that, education serves a purpose. But until next time, peace, hotep, bye-bye. Hope I educated you.